A number of stories new for you at 4. Good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. I'm Stacey Van Dyke. A West Fargo business was searched by FBI agents. It happened yesterday morning. FBI agents searched ProMark Services on Oak Ridge Loop East. An FBI spokesperson wouldn't say why, only sharing that the agents were performing a court-authorized law enforcement activity. The spokesperson wouldn't confirm if there's an open investigation against that business, but said there is no threat to the public. A man has pleaded guilty for embezzling funds from a nonprofit in West Fargo. Eric Jorgensen of Fargo pleaded guilty to felony theft deception from his time volunteering with the West Fargo VFW. According to court documents, Jorgensen was the general manager and was brought on to run the daily operations of the restaurant. After a year, VFW members and leadership were made aware of missing funds and overdraft fees on their accounts. They say the fraudulent transactions amounted to more than $60,000. According to the plea, Jorgensen was sentenced to 2 years probation. A restitution hearing is scheduled for later this month. New information now on a story we've been following for days. The man responsible for yesterday's day-long standoff in Richland County has been officially charged. Court records say Adam Prochnow is being charged with arson. Police say they were attempting to get a search warrant for his property as they believe he's the person who set off a homemade bomb at the Richland County Law Enforcement Center Tuesday. Now, before that search, police say he lit his garage on fire and started putting threatening posts on Facebook. He's being held at the Cass County Jail. He had a previous run-in with police last summer involving an AK-47. A concerning report out of the Osgood area. Fargo police are investigating an alleged assault that happened yesterday after school. Officers say just after 3:30, 4 children were approached by a teenager and a physical altercation started. Police say a report was filed for assault. Today, a parent posted on social media saying her daughter and 3 friends were walking home from Osgood Elementary when they were approached by someone who grabbed one of the girls and attempted to carry her away. Now, police tell us there's no information to suggest an abduction, but investigators are working with the children and their parents to understand what exactly happened. We'll keep you updated right here on Valley News Live. It's looking like a nice weekend in the metro, but if you're heading out of town, you might run into some rough weather. That's why Hutch has issued first alert weather days in parts of the area. Hutch?
Stacey, thanks so much, and happy Friday, everyone. Our weather fairly quiet, albeit cloudy, as we close out our work week on a warmer trend, but we do have that weekend storm that will have regional impacts. A lot of regional travel going on. Here's the very latest. First and foremost, the impacts will be mainly south and southeast of the Fargo-Moorhead area. If you're in the Devil's Lake Basin, Grand Forks, not too much of an impact at all. Now, we will have a band of heavy snow potential, and there's some areas of ice expected, whether you're traveling on I-29 or I-94. Here's the latest hour-by-hour style forecast, and I'll head over to the big wall to point this out. Number one, the pink is ice, the green rain. Thunderstorms in the afternoon hours in the Twin Cities and points south could be strong, particularly closer to the Iowa border. But the ice begins after noon on the I-29 corridor and stretching across portions of Minnesota. Then the snow makes its way in, and by the 5 to 7 o'clock hour, it's working its way through. Heavy at times, gusty north winds take hold and get very strong as the snow exits overnight. By morning, it's out of here. Still a cool northwest wind making its way in. Heaviest snow band, notice this, Morris, Benson, Grant County, all the way into southern parts of Otter Tail and Wadena counties. That's where the heaviest snow extending all the way up into the Duluth area. Accumulating ice over 1/10 of an inch possible as well. We'll keep you updated on the storm right here and of course on the Valley News Live weather app. More in just a few moments.
All right, thanks so much, Hutch. The U.S. has set up a line of communication directly with Russia to avoid any miscommunication as Moscow's war on Ukraine rages on. The Pentagon says the Russians have fired more than 500 missiles in the week since they invaded Ukraine, as experts warn the worst is yet to come. Natalie Brand reports from the White House, where President Biden also continues to coordinate the U.S. response with European allies.
The sounds of sirens and gunfire in Ukraine's capital of Kyiv, with a large Russian military convoy now about 15 miles away. The Russians are also closing in on several other major cities.
The days to come are likely to be worse, with more death, more suffering, and more destruction.
A concern echoed by Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Brussels, meeting with NATO and European allies.
We have to sustain this until it stops, until the war is over, the Russian forces leave, the Ukrainian people regain their independence.
The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting Friday morning after Russia took control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Heavy shelling sparked a brief fire, but there are no reports of radiation escaping.
We've just witnessed a dangerous new escalation that represents a dire threat to all of Europe and the world.
President Biden spoke to leaders of neighboring countries Friday, holding a call with Poland's president before meeting in person with Finland's president. Finland typically stays neutral, but a recent poll there found increasing public support for joining NATO.
We're committed to helping Ukraine defend itself and in support of the humanitarian needs of the Ukrainian people.
As economic consequences for Russia continue to expand, the Commerce Department announced new regulations Friday aimed at cutting off Russia's oil refineries from U.S. technology exports. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The Biden administration is working to determine whether Russia's actions at the nuclear power plant and other civilian buildings meet the legal definition of war crimes. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz today signed an executive order to condemn Russian aggression against Ukraine and support the people of Ukraine by requiring that state agencies terminate existing contracts with Russian entities and refrain from entering into future contracts with them. Governor Walz saying, in part, I encourage other individuals, companies, and organizations to stand with their Ukrainian neighbors and end support to Russian entities. Most of the ideas for the so-called Parents' Bill of Rights are not expected to make it through the Minnesota legislature. The Republican-controlled state Senate yesterday narrowly passed a bill allowing parents to review instructional materials at their kids' schools. Senate GOP leaders deferred debate over one of the most contentious bills that's opposed by advocates for LGBTQ youth. The Democratic-controlled House is likely to vote down most of the Parents' Bill of Rights ideas this session. As international tensions rise and trade becomes a challenge with dominant countries in producing products and equipment for American consumers like China, President Biden met with the CEO of a major technology company to announce a $54 million investment in producing equipment for the electrical infrastructure. With supply chains squeezed after the pandemic, the president is arguing that the return of factory jobs to the U.S. will help eliminate knots in the supply chain and keep inflation low. The president also announced details on a final rule tied to his Made in America executive order from January of last year.
Today, we're issuing a rule to raise the amount of domestic content required to be considered made in America from 55% to 75%.
That rule will require companies providing goods to the federal government have 75% of their product content made domestically, whereas just mentioned, the previous rule only required 55%. A community is reeling after a student opened fire this morning at a high school in Kansas. Police say the school resource officer and a school administrator were hurt, with at least one in critical condition. The campus was locked down. Police took a suspect who's a student at the school into custody. The suspect was also shot in the incident. Police say the shooting happened in the office area of the school and no students were hurt. The Supreme Court has reinstated the death sentence for convicted Boston Marathon bomber Johar Tsarnaev. The bombing killed 3 people near the finish line of the marathon in 2013. The justices, by a 6-3 vote today, agreed with the Biden administration's arguments that a federal appeals court was wrong to throw out that sentence, though it's unlikely he'll be executed anytime soon. The Justice Department halted federal executions last summer after the Trump administration carried out 13 executions in its final 6 months. President Biden has said he opposes the death penalty, but his administration was put in the position of defending the sentence at the Supreme Court. It's being called the most significant environmental pact since the Paris Climate Accord. 175 UN member states have agreed to create a legally binding treaty to end plastic pollution by 2024. Riley Carlson reports from London.
Every year, 11 million tons of plastic waste ends up in the oceans, threatening wildlife and littering beaches. Now the UN Environment Assembly is stepping up.
I see no objections. It is so decided.
To create a resolution aimed at ending plastic pollution.
It really was a landmark decision to have all of the countries of the world decide that they want to have a plastic treaty.
A negotiating committee will hold a series of meetings over the next 2 years to settle on a legally binding agreement, one that will put limits on the life cycle of plastics, from when and how they're made to how they're thrown away or recycled. What will change for the average person?
Definitely for the future, it will mean less pollution. It will also mean other products that have less plastic, and especially the useless plastics.
But it won't be without its challenges. The plastic production industry is valued at $522 billion.
We got to move beyond the plastic age. We don't want to go back to stone time, but we are smart and we can have something better than plastic waste.
Making a better future for our oceans and environment. Riley Carlson, CBS News, London.
The program says plastic production soared from 2 million tons in 1950 to nearly 350 million tons in 2017. Well, coming